There are moments, so small, they almost go unnoticed. A shift in tone, a sentence that lands a little too heavy, a presence that tries to rise above the rest. And slowly, the air in the room begins to change. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to tilt the rhythm of the conversation. This is where arrogance appears, not as strength, but as a structure, a fragile construction, built carefully over time, layer by layer, Wort by Wort, reaction by reaction. It seeks height, it seeks dominance, it seeks recognition, and yet, beneath it, there is often something quieter, something uncertain. The ancient Stoics understood this well. They did not see arrogance as something to fight, but as something that collapses when it is no longer fed. No resistance, no fuel, no reaction, no fire. And so, the real power was never in striking back. It was in choosing not to be moved. Imagine a conversation unfolding. Someone speaks with certainty, but not the calm kind. A certainty that presses, that pushes, that demands to be acknowledged. Most responses follow a familiar path. Defend, explain, counter, and before long, two voices rise, two positions harden, and the space between them narrows into conflict. But there is another way, a quieter way, a way that does not escalate, and yet does not submit. 7 phrases, simple on the surface, but beneath them, a different kind of control, not over others, but over the self. The first phrase, you have a right to think that way. There is no argument here, no agreement either, just recognition, a boundary, drawn without force. Arrogance expects resistance. It searches for something to push against. When that resistance does not appear, its shape begins to falter, like pressure released from something overfilled. The moment softens, not because one side has won, but because the need to win has quietly dissolved. The second phrase, that's an interesting perspective, a subtle shift from opposition to observation. The words do not carry approval, they do not carry rejection, they simply hold space, and in that space, something unexpected happens. The energy changes. What was once a confrontation becomes something less defined, less sharp, less urgent. The conversation loosens, and without tension, arrogance has nothing to hold on to. The third phrase, that gives me something to think about. Time enters the room, a pause, where reaction would normally rush in. Arrogance thrives on immediacy, quick replies, fast dominance. But reflection slows everything down, and when the pace shifts, control shifts with it. The conversation is no longer a race. It becomes a landscape, something to move through, instead of something to win. The fourth phrase, I'd prefer to hear more before I respond. Now the rhythm changes completely. Instead of stepping forward, there is a step back. Not retreat, but positioning. Listening becomes visible, and with it, a quiet authority emerges. The need to interrupt disappears. The urgency to prove fades. Arrogance, which depends on momentum, finds itself suspended, without motion, without direction. The fifth phrase, it's interesting how everyone sees things differently. A wider frame appears. The conversation is no longer about who is right. It becomes about perspective, multiplicity, variation. No single view stands alone anymore. Each one is simply one among many, and in that realization, the illusion of superiority weakens. Not attacked, not dismantled directly, just placed into context. And context has a way of softening absolutes. The sixth phrase, I understand why you might see it that way. Understanding without surrender. Clarity without agreement. This is where tension dissolves, without anyone needing to step down. To be understood removes the need to fight for recognition. The structure of arrogance, which depends on being heard, begins to relax, not defeated, but no longer activated. And what remains is simply a point of view, nothing more. And finally, the seventh phrase, if that works for you, then that's fine. This is where the cycle ends. No continuation, no reopening, just a quiet closing. The conversation does not explode. It settles. Arrogance, which seeks continuation, finds no path forward. There is no resistance to push, no argument to win, only stillness. And in that stillness, the entire structure loses its purpose. These phrases are not techniques. They are not tricks to control others. Used without awareness, they become empty. But when they emerge from a steady mind, they carry weight, because behind them there is no urgency, no need to prove, no need to dominate, only presence. And presence is difficult to challenge, not because it resists, but because it does not move unnecessarily. It does not react to every shift. It does not rise to every provocation. It remains steady, grounded, unrushed. There is something that begins to change when this becomes consistent, not in others first, but in the space itself. Conversations become quieter, not silent, but less charged, less reactive. People begin to notice, without being told, a different kind of rhythm, a different kind of response, and over time, a different kind of respect. Not the loud kind, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that forms slowly, almost invisibly, through repeated moments of not being pulled, because that is where the shift truly happens, not in a single sentence, not in a single interaction, but in the pattern, the repetition, the quiet discipline of choosing not to react. When reaction would be easy, there is a point where something becomes clear. Control was never about others, never about managing behavior or winning exchanges. It was always about this, the space between stimulus and response, that narrow opening where choice exists, where awareness can step in before habit takes over. And once that space is seen, it cannot be unseen. It appears again and again, in conversation, in conflicts, in moments of pressure, always there, waiting. Most pass through it unconsciously. Reaction follows reaction, impulse follows impulse, and the pattern continues. But occasionally, there is a pause, a breath, a decision to not continue the cycle. And in that moment, everything changes, not externally, not immediately, but internally, fundamentally, because the moment you are no longer pulled, you are no longer controlled. And the moment you are no longer controlled, the entire dynamic shifts. Arrogance may still appear, in different voices, different places, different forms, but it no longer lands the same way. It no longer creates the same reaction. It passes through without leaving a mark. And what remains is something quieter, something more stable, a presence that does not depend on the behavior of others. This is the essence of Stoic strength, not suppression, not indifference, but clarity, the ability to see what is happening without being consumed by it. And from that clarity comes choice. From choice comes consistency. And from consistency comes a life that is no longer shaped by external noise. So the next time a voice rises, a tone sharpens, a presence tries to dominate the space, there is no need to match it, no need to resist it. Just remember, a different response creates a different reality. A quieter response reshapes the entire interaction. And sometimes, the most powerful thing that can be said is the thing that carries no need to win at all.